conference participants, it is really my greatest pleasure to be the first speaker in line at this conference. And I do not want to take a lot of your time, but I would like to present some results of the recent research that we are conducting under Horizon 2020 project called MAGIC. Which refers to migration and asylum governance in Europe. So it is actually referring to a very hot button issue in Europe, which is the rapid boom of the asylum applications and the arrival of the third country nationals who are applying for asylum in European countries. You know that this kind of a crisis, as some media portray that, but we actually do not support that portrayal. We think it was not so much a crisis of numbers, but it was more like a crisis of shared responsibility. So definitely just some negative portray that that some media projected on the population, but in fact, it was not a crisis per se. So we kind of we're trying through also this project to show and look on the real data on how this kind of perceptions and this kind of a crisis portrayal matches the reality, how the people and the portrayal of crisis can actually affect the new arrivals, the integration of the asylum seekers, and so on and so forth. So this is a paper with my co-author. And first of all, we looked just on the data. We looked on the maps of the concentration of new arriving asylum seekers throughout Europe. I will go quickly through the slides and show them to you in Greece. So this is where the most asylum seekers are recorded at the end of 2019. So December 2019, it looked like this. The bigger the dot, the more asylum seekers are on the site. And we looked how this map, how this redistribution, because we see also here that there are places where there are more people and the places where there are less people, how this kind of a map coincides or complies with willingness of the local authorities, of governance, of people, decision makers, to let the people be there. Basically, how much the government is trying to create this kind of a redistribution, how much the government makes or this decision where the people go. If they leave them if they leave the asylum seekers in the islands, or they actually bring them to the mainland, what is this kind of a policy and how much the population and perceptions of the populations match this map, this redistribution, and affect the government decisions. So, and this was like the main idea behind the map of the asylum seekers, where there are people, because we see that throughout Europe, there are countries who like to let people just go to places where they want, just go wherever you want, where you find the best place to live, to start new life. And usually third country nationals go to the big cities. They have some labor opportunities and so on. But there are also some countries, this is, for example, the case of some northern countries and so on. But there are many other, and also Germany in certain sense. But then there are countries, and especially after 2015, there are more and more countries, also the Germany started with this policy, that they redistribute people, that they try to have this kind of a policy that each part of the country should have some number of asylum seekers. Do not let them go anywhere. Just make them go to places where there are less people, less asylum seekers, and to have this kind of a even redistribution. And there are some countries who actually try to keep the asylum seekers as far from the big cities as possible. This is the case of Greece. Just put them on the island. We do not want to know about them. Just let them be there. And we want to forget about this problem. So there are different kind of governance regimes. There is the governance regimes of even redistribution across the country, then the government's redistribution far from the cities. And there is also the governance of let's just go to some place where you want to go and we'll help you locally, like 3 different governance regimes. And we looked how the perceptions of the local populations actually shape this kind of decisions and this kind of a governance. Okay, we picked up a case of Greece. Why? Because Greece has been in the forefront of the whole asylum. It was as a part, or I mean, like the first country that most of the asylum seekers went through at the beginning of this upsurge of asylum seekers to Europe. So that's why we picked Greece. In Greece, it's a very special situation. They have a lot of bureaucracy, meaning there are 3 ministries who take care of refugees. So it's even a little bit more complicated because of that. But it's not our primary issue. We have contacted 30 respondents in Greece from the municipalities, from the NGOs, the Vice Mayor of Athens, the Solidarity Now, and some other NGOs, and also former former asylum seekers and now successful asylum grantees. And we asked them the questions which were our major concern. We asked them mostly if they feel or what is kind of this ambiance in Greece, and in what parts the local population actually feels threatened by the upsurge of asylum seekers. We ask them if they perceive them as security threat, or the majority of population, if they perceive them as a security threat, some economic threat, or even environmental threat. Why these 3 dimensions? Because they were picked in the literature as the most important kind of a threat that shape the perceptions of across the population towards asylum seekers. There is a lot of literature about that. And if you're interested, of course, I can give you some references. Okay, so when we look at the map, the first one that I showed you, we can actually see that the most, maybe you see also this, which I don't want. So what you see the most asylum seekers are in the islands. So basically the gateway to Europe, such as Lesbos, very media popular case to show as a bad case of lack of the governance. And then there are some other islands such as Samos, Chios, and so on, Leros. And then there are the 2 big cities, Athens, the capital, and Thessaloniki, which is basically in the northern part, where the most people come in through the mainland, not through the islands, but through the mainland where they go. So this is what we see, sorry. So this is what we see when we look on the map. Yep. When we look also on the map and look on the number of the people, yeah, so that's it. But we see that there are definitely differences what asylum seekers, I mean, like what islands, what parts of the city are mostly are where the most of asylum seekers are dwelling. And we see a large differences in the islands. Lesbos as the first island inland from the Turkish border. We see that there is definitely a lot of asylum seekers coming there. And then there are all the other islands. Why am I talking about Lesbos that much? Is that because when we did the research, actually also on the islands, we found a very striking evidence that in Lesbos, you know, the very famous Moria camp, that has been burnt down in September 2020, so almost a year ago. Well, and there was, of course, a lot of talks about that, about the dire conditions, very inhuman conditions people were living in that camp, in that refugee camp. Well, in our research, we found that basically that camp completely lacked any governance. According to the UNHCR, so the higher commissioner for the refugees of the United Nations, it is expected, not expected, but it is prescribed to have 20 meters per encamped refugee or asylum seeker. So every single asylum seeker should have 20 square meters of space. 20 square meters, that's the minimum that that needs to be offered to the asylum seekers. Well, if we look on the number of the square footage or on the number of squares, the space that asylum seekers have in refugee camps in the islands, we can see that they are going okay in Chios, they are doing quite nice, they are doing still okay in Leros and Samos. In Kos, it is getting worse, but in Lesvos, they do not have 20 meters, 20 square meters. They do have only 4.5 square meter, 4.5 square meter per one asylum seeker. That was absolutely not possible to sustain. Already this kind of a number should have showed the authorities that this community, Moria, is close to be destroyed, or I mean like that there is the situation that we call tipping point. There is something that's going to break and it's going to change there, that it's not sustainable. And that's what happened. Then after 4 years of, like ignorance of the problem from the local authorities, basically the people in the camp allegedly took action and burned the camp down, which is not their fault, basically because the camp was seriously in the trouble of losing the basic, it was not able to cover to meet the basic needs of people living there. Okay. And these kind of numbers are not actually showed. That was only provided to us from the local authorities not the local authorities official, but from the NGOs that work in field. And they actually calculated the number of people every day, and they did the average and kind of provided us with those numbers. Okay, so I'm talking now so much about that, how the situation is bad in the islands and the ignorance of central government to deal with it. Well, we have looked and we asked our respondents about the governance, not just the central government in Athens, but also local governance, how they try to treat different kind of problems, different kind of clashes, arguments, and also how the local population is supporting their decisions. And we found big differences. We found few parts and few cities, not the central government, but there are cities. So on the local level, there are actually few cities and provinces that try to address the issue. And there are also people who are backing up their decisions. These parts are also part of Athens. Up till 2019, they had a vice mayor for refugees who was doing basically nothing, only trying to put the refugees, connect them with the NGOs and provide them more housing, started the projects for housing of refugees and so on. So he actually treated and tried to, was involved only with this kind of issues. Then also Thessaloniki starting this kind of more housing projects. But from the islands, none of these Lesbos, Chios, where the situation is really bad. Local mayors are totally against all kind of to address those kind of issues. Actually, there are only few islands in Greece who offered to take the refugees. So they were not like, okay, leave them there, we do not want to see them, but they actually, the local mayors proactively asked the Lesvos and the Leros, the two islands, okay, let the refugees come to us. We have the capacities, we can house them, we will help them. These were Ioannina, Crete, so the biggest island in Greece, and Larissa. But they are still only pioneers. There are too many other local provinces and municipalities that are completely scared to address the situation, even though they are compared, the number of asylum seekers compared to the local population is very low. Still, they do not want to do it. And from the when I'm talking about the local, it is important also to say that the central policy, all of our respondents said that the central policy officially, it says, okay, we need to address this issue. We will relocate the people from the island to the mainland and find them some better place. But basically nothing is going on. There is a lot of ignorance. There is a lot of willingness to take care of the issue. This was like the main message of the whole research. There is, of course, some more data that backed up the research, showing also how the refugees are integrated. We looked on the housing, we looked on labor market access, and we found again that this kind of a perception of local populations, the number of NGOs that work in the area, that helps a lot to find also the job. About 30% of the asylum seekers who come to the NGOs, they do get a job. That is a very promising number. But again, it's only the number of people that reach the NGO. If they do not have it is not the case of the island. They need to be in the mainland, close to the big cities where there is actually possibility of work. And then they win, basically. At least 30% of them get some job and get some money. But the rest of them, a lot of illegal activities, and of course, the situation in Greece after the big crash after the big crash and debt crisis at the beginning of this decade was not hit also the economy. So it's not like the best time also for the Greeks, but on the other hand, and there is a high unemployment rate in Greece, 16%, but still there is a possibility. Again, that is unless they are able to get transferred from the island. They need to get off the island, and then 30% of them actually get a job. Okay, I guess this was like the most interesting thing that I wanted to say. One more thing, it is also very interesting that people coming to the island are actually discriminated. Why discriminated? First, if they come to the island, they are now subject to this kind of a EU-Turkey deal. If they came, because there are two entry points, the entry point on the mainland in Philakios, close to Thessaloniki, this one, if they come through that, they actually are not subject to this EU-Turkey deal, and they go into this regular asylum procedure, which is not that quick. And basically, most of them get, I'm not saying the asylum in the end, but at least they get the chance to move also through the mainland, find some job, or at least not get to big city and find some job, and not to get into that kind of a unresolved issues of the island population, which is basically no labor opportunities, just living in a congested camps without food, not without, but yeah, fighting for basic needs, for food, for water, for hygiene, for wood, for anything, and even for personal space. And waiting for the transfer to the mainland, which is very difficult to actually occur, also because of this very bad policy and this kind of ignorance of local and the central policy decision makers. So I guess that, not I guess, but based on the findings, we can say that people who are coming through the mainland, through the Phylakios, are better off than people coming to the islands. People coming to the islands are facing so many troubles that in the end, they are basically stuck in the process or transferred back to Turkey, or just waiting in the camp with more people coming in. And this kind of a discrimination, we think is something that we should, and also the local authorities should look more into, because this is not going away. It needs to be resolved somehow. Either there will be more camps burned down, there will be more locals taking off the islands, and bigger problems coming in. So what we consider, again, coming to the basic thesis, it's not the crisis so much of any kind of numbers. It is basically the crisis of shared responsibility, of any willingness or to solve the issue in some kind of other matters. And it's very hot button issues, particularly in Greece, which is in the forefront. Where the decisions, that is also very nice saying, that is where the decisions are taken more reactively than preemptively. In any case, I hope that you at least enjoyed some parts of the presentations. And of course, I'm open to any questions that you might have. Thank you very much for your attention.